Doctor Who vs. Scratchman, Part 9. I'm sorry it's taken us this long to meet. I've been a fan of yours for quite some time, Doctor. You've sent more humans to me than you'd think, like when you torched Rome. I got quite a few good souls out of that blaze, Scratchman said as he led the Doctor and Yerox up a large staircase, which the fire that instantly disappeared had been covering.
You did what?
Yerox asked.
It was an accident. Plus, it wasn't really me. It was Nero,
the Doctor said awkwardly, unable to look at Yerox in the face. Yes, but you were his muse, shall we say, Doctor? Scratchman insisted.
Something like that,
the Doctor said as he struggled up the steps, with Yerox even having to help him up. Now, Doctor. I can always kill you, and you can regenerate into a younger, much fitter man if you want, Scratchman taunted.
Thanks for the offer, but I can't see you leaving much left to regenerate, the Doctor said.
That's true, I do get a little carried away, Scratchman laughed. All around the staircase were 50-foot demons screaming and fighting with one another, who were surrounded by nothing but fire. The screams of the damned souls were deafening at the ground level, but as they reached the top, they became almost completely silent. At the top of the staircase were two doors made of still dripping flesh and bone. They both swung open on Scratchman's mental command, while inside was a long gold dining table. The room was filled with strange figures, whose heads were nothing but blue flames. The figures remained completely still, though Scratchman assured the Doctor that they were very much alive and in tremendous pain. There were also several paintings of Scratchman and his demon hordes invading planets on the left-hand side of the room, while on the right-hand side there was a huge window with a view of the hellish landscape outside. Just below the castle, the Doctor could see the war between Scratchman's horde and the residents. Beyond the battle, however, were massive mountains and pits, all of which were filled with the souls of humans and other strange creatures being subject to the most horrific torture. Those idiots are trying to make their way into this castle. There's only one way to get to the tower. All the others lead to some rather nasty little traps I've set out, Scratchman said as he sat down and conjured up a glass of red wine for himself.
I must admit, I'm surprised, given how elaborate everything else is here, that you've chosen such a, shall we say, human appearance. Is that just for our benefit?
The Doctor asked. Oh, I assure you, Time Lord, nothing here will be for your benefit. I like this face. It belonged to someone from this universe before I took it over. He was a man, like you, Doctor. He was a traveler. But after saving a few worlds, he got delusions that it made him into some kind of hero. He thought I was just another 2-bit villain for him to defeat and boast about to his followers after. In all fairness, he did give me some trouble, but now he rots at the bottom of this castle. I took his face because it used to represent hope to people. He loved that. It meant more to him than anything else, so I thought it would be funny if his face came to represent fear and terror to all the people he once tried to save. I was thinking about doing the same to you, but you've had 10 already. You can never hold on to one for too long, can you?
Yes, well, this has been fun, eh, Scratchman? Or do you prefer Satan?
The Doctor said. Please, call me Harry Scratch. I forgot my real name, if I ever had one. I've been given so many over the millions of years by so many people, and they're always so damn negative. Harry Scratch, I think, has a more casual sound to it, don't you?
You're a monster,
Yerox said.
You're only just getting that now?
The Doctor replied sarcastically. I am a monster to you, yes. But then tell me, Doctor, what intelligent species doesn't exploit and slaughter what it perceives to be lesser creatures for its own survival? The great predators of the earth, such as the lion, the shark, the Tyrannosaurus rex, they all hunted less intelligent, weaker creatures, did they not? Humanity is not much better. Look at the way they treat animals. A butcher's shop may look harmless, even appealing to you, Doctor, but to the species strung up in its windows, it's comparable to my pit out there.
You don't just kill, you torture your victims. You break them down to your level, the doctor protested.
You are wrong. I feed on fear, chaos, and pain. I need the psychic energy it generates, just as you need food. So I sacrifice lesser creatures to keep myself alive, the same way a human does when it sinks its teeth into a steak. The gulf between even you and me, Time Lord, is far beyond that of a human and animal. My lifespan is greater than that of entire universes. I have knowledge that even your people would never understand. You are all nothing to me. So, therefore, I see no evil in making you suffer to prolong my own life, any more than a farmer does when he slits a bovine's throat.
In spite of your supposed superiority, you still need me in my old, broken-down, obsolete time machine,
The doctor said as he proudly clutched his lapels. Yeah, well, that's only because of the tight situation I found myself in. Eons ago, when I first conquered this universe, the latest in billions I have devoured, I was sealed in here by the inhabitants of another reality. Some of them got wind of what I was, from a few who escaped my grasp in this world. An alliance formed between the most advanced life forms from numerous realities to seal me in here. I could have beaten them all on my own, but the cowards had to cheat. For the first time, Scratchman started to show anger as he spoke.
Now, Harry. You of all people can hardly complain about people not playing fair, the doctor said.
Yes. Well, anyway, Scratchman continued. For thousands of years I had to make do with just this one universe, and the remains of a few I'd conquered before that I kept with me below as an emergency food source. But it wasn't enough. This universe was gradually decaying into nothing, and with it, my food. Once it had gone, I'd be left here all alone, still trapped by the barrier. I'd rot away into nothing. The only reason this place is still standing is because of me.
Not much of a claim when you're the one who, more or less, tore it apart in the first place, Harry,
the doctor replied flippantly, which almost annoyed Scratchman. Yes, quite. But then, when all hope for me seemed lost, I noticed a tiny little rip in the barrier. When I was at full power and had struck at the barrier with all of my fury after it was first placed around this universe, I didn't realize it until much later, but I had obviously managed to create a little break. The rip led to a small, seemingly insignificant planet named Earth. For centuries, I could only peer through the rip and influence the natives of that wretched planet ever so slightly. A few delusions of grandeur here, the odd lingering resentment towards something or someone there. Eventually, I was able to send through the odd creature who I hoped could widen the rip. The odd beast like a kraken, a demon, and so on. Sadly, they failed. But they did create a stronger link to me and this Earth, which allowed me to absorb, unfortunately, a small fraction of human minds, usually at the moment of death. It helped prolong my life by who knows how many years. Over the centuries, the primitives told stories about me, even came up with ideas to comfort themselves about how only the wicked were sent to my domain. You should see the looks on the faces of the humans who lived an honest life when they arrived here. Even after centuries, they still can't take it in.
I can imagine,
the doctor replied in a dry tone. Serves them right, I say, to think they're better than anyone else. Still, while it was an amusing distraction from my impending death, toying with the primitives, it was only when I saw your vessel arrive at various different points that I realized I could free myself. Other aliens had visited Earth, some even to see the strange disturbance my rip had created, but none of them had the technology you did. Well, apart from the Osirans. I couldn't influence them, however. In my current state, I was too weak to even think of taking them on. They were even able to use the power from my rip for their own ends, and then the Federation that established itself after the Osirans, well, all its representatives kept fighting among each other too much to the point where they could never build anything that could help me. It took me a while to realize you were different. At first, I didn't even know you were the same man, but my followers kept track of your visits to slowly learn the truth. For centuries, I've used all my power to widen the rip to send through more of my minions to capture you. Finally, I was able to send through the army on that island to try and trap you. I found a way to sense when your machine arrives, Doctor. It always leaves little tiny ripples in the vortex, ahead of when it's about to arrive. Think of it as being like the water pushed ahead by a heavy ship. Once I sensed them, I immediately sent my elite souls to create portals to allow my forces through to capture you on that miserable little island. I must admit, I was disappointed at how unprepared my warriors were. I'm at least glad that Pan was of use to me.
Yes, well, if he has any semblance of a conscience, I hope it torments him forever, the doctor said.
Your machine, old, outdated, and worthless as it may be. The doctor was getting visibly annoyed at Scratchman talking about the TARDIS that way. But of course, the demon didn't care and continued. It still contains tremendous power due to the ingenuity of the Time Lords. If I were to link it to the rip and drain all of its energy into it, it might widen it to be just large enough for me to pass through completely. I'll have to be at my lowest stage of power even to get through it under those circumstances. It's quite funny in a way, though, Doctor, Scratchman said as he sat back with a smug look on his face. Or rather, the face he had stolen. When you ran away to go exploring, you never thought once how reckless it was to take a piece of advanced technology like the TARDIS with you. If it weren't for your carelessness, I would never have gained the means of my escape.
Yes, well, I could be forgiven for not thinking, oh dear, Satan is going to steal my ship and use it to escape from hell when I first ran away, the doctor replied.
Maybe next time you'll be more careful, Scratchman laughed before taking a sip of wine. Or rather, something that looked like wine. I need you to help me break through your ship's defenses, Doctor. Oh, sure, in time I could easily rip through them, but I don't have much of that left. It's taken all of my limited power to hold this planet together, and that is only great in this castle. That's the real reason I didn't come and get you myself. If I had left this place for even a few minutes, I'd have been drained, Scratchman said in a less jovial tone.
Why would I help you? Aside from the obvious, you can't threaten me with anything but death. If what you say is true, in a few days, maybe even a few hours, this entire place will crumble, the doctor replied. Time Lord, I have enough power to ensure that at least one person will become an immortal like me, and share my fate in the eternal nothingness this universe will soon become. I can think of no one better to take my frustrations out on than you, Time Lord. Well, when you put it that way. For now, I'll play along. Tell me, though, where do you come from? The doctor asked. Why do you care, Time Lord? I always care. That's what's gotten me into this mess in the first place. If only we had ignored that scarecrow, Yarok said. No, I was talking about my entire life, the doctor replied to Yarok's. I don't know where I came from, Scratchman said, honestly. My first memory is nothing but fire, pain, and struggling with a creature like me before being cast across the stars that I later destroyed. I tell my followers here that I am God, because I feel it makes no difference. To them, I am a deity, and I also believe firmly that I am a part of his plan too. You believe in a supernatural creator? What makes you think that you weren't just some cosmic accident, The doctor protested. Scratchman smiled. Something like me could not come about by accident, Time Lord. I am designed to feed on the suffering of others. I am a part of the Creator's plan. He's clearly not benevolent. How could he be if he created me? As far as I'm concerned, I am following the universal way of life for stronger life forms to dominate lesser creatures. Now then, let's not delay any longer, shall we? I just can't wait to visit your reality properly. Elena, meanwhile, made it past the warring monsters to the gates of the castle, having wisely avoided taking part in any of the fighting. Even with her skills in Arcturian kung fu, she would have been cut down in seconds if she had. Surprisingly, the castle's 2 front doors were open, and there were no guards at them, which worried her greatly. Still, Elena couldn't stay out here for any longer, and she just had to assume that Scratchman's guards were all caught up in the battle.
Behind her, most of the lesser demons and aliens had been slaughtered, and it was only the most powerful left, including the leader of the Harpies, who still fought valiantly. Inside the castle was a long hall. In contrast to the outside of the castle, this hall looked pristine. There were also paintings of strange creatures being attacked by Scratchman's monsters adorning all of its walls. As Elena walked down the hall slowly, keeping her eye out for any of Scratchman's minions, she felt she could hear faint screams coming from the paintings. Elena then walked towards one of the paintings of a strikingly beautiful Cyclops woman with green hair. Below it read, "The Great Ciclia," once a hero of her people, the Uriox. She thought she could defeat Scratchman. In the painting, Ciclia looked miserable. There was a single tear coming down her face. Next to the painting of Ciclia was a painting of a large centaur with a hideous demon riding on its back. The caption read, "See what happens when you cross old Harry?" When Elena looked back at the painting of Ciclia, a hideous, pig-faced, green-skinned, slimy demon was now grabbing her throat from behind. The screams suddenly got louder and louder, so much that Elena started to back off, but when she turned around, she saw that the front door to Scratchman's castle had vanished. It was now an endless corridor of paintings at both ends. Elena ran deeper into the castle as there was no way of going back. As she ran down the corridor, however, a brick wall suddenly appeared in front of her, followed by the sound of a cruel, mocking laughter.
"You look good on my wall. I do so love collecting pretty girls,"
a hideous, high-pitched voice screeched from all around. Elena's attention was suddenly drawn to a blank painting by the wall, though she wasn't sure why. She didn't want to look at it, but she couldn't look away. Some force was pulling her towards it. Underneath the painting was a caption. Elena. She really should have stayed in the 31st century. Elena tried to pull away from the seemingly empty canvas, but the same powerful force pulled her hand through it. The canvas then turned to water when she touched it, and in a few minutes, the mutant was pulled through completely. On the other side of the painting was the courtyard of a tiny castle, overlit by a black, thunderous sky above. When Elena tried to leave the courtyard via drawbridge, she was held back by an invisible barrier. She pounded and kicked on the barrier as hard as she could, but it made no difference.
"There is nothing beyond that wall,"
a voice from above said. As Elena turned around, she saw a hideous giant creature emerge from the tallest tower at the end of the courtyard. The beast's large, shapeless body was covered in faces, almost all of them screaming. The largest face at the center, however, spoke.
"This is all that is left of the planet Orisa. All of the paintings you passed. They are what is left of many of the worlds in this universe. Scratchman destroyed most of the planets and used their remains to build his domain out there. What was left of some other planets, however, he turned into these pocket dimensions to torture anyone brave and stupid enough to try and break into his castle."
"What are you going to do to me?" Elena asked.
"We do not want to. We have no choice. We were all once individuals, a race. We survived the apocalypse of our world, but Scratchman fused us all together. We are in a state of constant agony. Our identities constantly merge. We share each other's pain. None of us even know who we were originally. You will be the same."
"Yeah, sorry, I've never been good with crowds," Elena said as she frantically ran around the castle from the hideous abomination. The beast must have stood over 12 feet tall. It didn't really have a shape. It was just a mass of flesh, faces, and blood, though it could still move as fast as Elena witnessed when it first slid down the tower of the castle like a snake.
"You cannot escape us. You will tire eventually, and one touch is all we need," it said.
Some of the faces begged the monster to show clemency.
"Please, how can you? We condemn another person to this fate!"
one of the other faces screamed.
"You know we have no choice."
Elena tried to throw a torch from a nearby tower into the monster, but it merely bounced off of its flesh. There was nothing she could do to even slow the monster down. All Elena could do for now was flee. The Doctor and Yarox, meanwhile, were forced to follow Scratchman through his dark, cobweb-ridden corridors.
You know, for an all-powerful being, you haven't half let this place go to the dogs, the doctor said.
I like cobwebs. Spiders torturing flies? It's like a tiny little appetizer for me, Scratchman said. As they reached the end of the corridor, Yerox and the doctor could hear what sounded like the TARDIS taking off.
What are you doing to my TARDIS?
The doctor asked. I would have thought you, of all people, would know the sound of your own TARDIS screaming, Doctor, Scratchman said with a perverse delight as he threw open the 2 doors at the end of the corridor. To his horror, the doctor could see the TARDIS completely encased in flames. It looked as though it was made of fire. I told you I need her energy to free myself from this hell. She was uncooperative, so I tried to make her see reason. She's rather stubborn like you, old boy. Normally, I love it when they struggle. It just makes it all the more fun when they break. But I am on a time limit here, so, if you will, just make her see reason, Scratchman said. Yerox could see the doctor was repressing his rage and anguish. No matter what the danger, in the brief time Yerox had known him, the doctor had always kept his calm, even remained jovial in the face of danger. Now, however, at the sight of his TARDIS suffering, the doctor could barely contain his anger.
Please, don't hurt her. I'll do anything you want, the doctor begged.
Scratchman smiled. People always reach a breaking point. I knew for you it would be your oldest companion. It's quite pathetic, really. You love that machine like a pet.
Please, Scratchman!
Call me Harry, Scratchman said as he made the flames vanish. You have a few minutes to link the TARDIS to the rip. No tricks, or else I'll make you burn along with your machine, Time Lord. The doctor entered the interior of the TARDIS, which had been twisted beyond all recognition. The walls were broken and bleeding. There were hideous, insect-like creatures swarming out of the broken roundels. The floors were covered in a disgusting, foul-smelling green slime, and on the scanner was footage of people being tortured. The doctor's heart sank as he saw what had been done to his beloved machine. Oh, trust me, I can do much, much more, Scratchman taunted. The doctor started to mess around with the console, while Scratchman waited impatiently. So, Scratchman said to Yerox, I didn't catch your name.
Here it is,
the doctor said as he held up a cable he had pulled from the TARDIS's console.
This is like the TARDIS version of veins in a human or Time Lord body. Just connect this to what you want, and you can suck the machine's blood, as it were, out, the doctor said in shame. You can't really be doing this, Doctor, Yerox said in dismay. I'd rather let the TARDIS die now than let it live on in this state for any longer.
You're a smarter man than I thought, Time Lord.
Yes, I am,
the doctor said as he lifted out his sonic screwdriver and activated the controls. Scratchman suddenly screamed as the TARDIS took off. The TARDIS, however, only managed to take off briefly before crashing back down again.
What happened?
Yerox asked.
You think I'd give him the TARDIS?
The doctor said boastfully.
It was an experiment. You see, Yerox, this entire reality is hanging by a thread. Scratchman may like to act laid back and in control, but every second for him is a struggle to hold these pitiful remains of a universe together. If we can break his concentration for long enough, this place will collapse and Scratchman will be trapped. When I gave him the TARDIS control, I was able to drain just an iota of his energy through it and power the old girl to teleport. As it was, we still couldn't get out of here. Scratchman still held on to us, but that second where his concentration was split will have repercussions. If we can only find a way to distract him for long enough, then we can break this realm and destroy Scratchman's food source, leaving him trapped. I should have known that you wouldn't give in to him. You even had me worried there. Yes, well, while I obviously would never give in to Scratchman, I must admit we have quite the redecorating job ahead of us. Still, the old girl is as tough as an old pair of boots, Yerox. If Scratchman thinks he can get to her or me with this bag of tricks, then he's as stupid as he looks. What about the creatures in this reality, Doctor? Yerox asked. I'm afraid there is nothing we can do for them. That battle was lost a long time ago, the doctor said bitterly. We can't just leave an entire universe to die. You think I want to? Besides, It isn't an entire universe. It's the last scrap of one. If Scratchman gets free, he'll destroy billions more," the doctor explained. Just then, Scratchman appeared on the TARDIS scanner. His face had begun to morph into his true form. He was still humanoid in shape, but his skin was beginning to catch fire, while his eyes formed into thick, black pieces of charcoal.
Time Lord, you will suffer.
The doctor switched the scanner off before Scratchman could finish his threats. As the doctor tried to make the TARDIS take off again, however, suddenly the console lit up in flames. The doctor and Yerox tried to make it for the doors, which started to close, while several rotting hands started to emerge from the slimy green floor. Yerox managed to pull free from the hands, while the doctor struggled. They were burning to the touch and scalded Yerox's hands badly. Several of the hideous insect-like creatures started to crawl all over Yerox's hands and bite his fingers. Still, he held on long enough for the doctor to pull free from the hands on the floor. The doctor then helped Yerox pull open the 2 doors to escape. Outside, the two found they were still in the castle. The TARDIS must have taken them a mere 20 feet before Scratchman managed to stop the machine in its tracks. Nevertheless, the effects of the doctor's brief attack on Scratchman were evident. The entire castle was overwhelmed with hideous creatures and nightmarish monsters, all fighting with one another. At the top of the room, however, Scratchman himself, now morphing into his true form, with flaming wings emerging from either side of his back, flew over the crowd of monsters.
You thought you could trick me, Time Lord. You shall be made to destroy your own world, and the earth at my bidding when I am free.
To be continued.